Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Hare Krishna. Let's go to page 1. I think the screen will be shared on that one. Vaishnavi is getting so expert. Okay. Okay. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance.
I was born
Born
in
in
the
the
darkness.
And my spiritual master opened my eyes.
And my spiritual master opened my eyes.
The torch of knowledge.
With the torch of knowledge.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto him.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto him.
Okay, so we are looking at chapter 10 from the opulence of the absolute. And the verse that we're on today, if our host could help us, I think it's 35.
32, Maharaj.
Oh, 30, we haven't got that far yet. Okay, 32, okay. Okay, so here we go. 32 then. Sarganam adir antascha madhyang chaivaham arjuna adhyatma vidya vidyanam vara pravadatam aham. Of all creations, I am the beginning and the end, and also the middle, O Arjuna. Of all sciences, I am the spiritual science of the self, and among logicians, I am the conclusive truth. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we would ask someone just to help us with the first paragraph. Any volunteers there? It's Vaishnavi, it's your call.
I can do it.
Okay.
Purport, among the created manifestations, the first is the creation of the total material elements. As explained before, the cosmic manifestation is created and conducted by Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, and then again it is annihilated by Lord Shiva. Brahma is the secondary creator. All these agents of creation, maintenance, and annihilation are incarnations of the material qualities of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is the beginning, the middle, and the end of all creation.
Okay, great. Shall we ask someone else to read the next paragraph then?
Yes. Yeah.
For advanced education, there are various kinds of books of knowledge, such as the 4 Vedas, the 6 supplements, the Vedanta Sutra, books of logic, books of religiosity, and the Puranas. So altogether there are 14 divisions of books of education. Of these, the book which presents Adhyatma Vidya, spiritual knowledge, in particular, the Vedanta Sutra, represents Krishna.
Good. And can we get one more person to read the last paragraph?
Curtis, please.
Curtis.
Otherwise, Kirti, go, please.
Okay, sure, Mataji. Among logicians, there are different kinds of arguments. Supporting one's argument with evidence that also supports the opposite side is called jalpa. Merely trying to defeat one's opponent is called Vedanta. But the actual conclusion is called Vad. This conclusive truth is a representation of Krishna.
Jai. Thank you very much for all the readers today. And we'll just go over some of the points on this verse, which is one of 20 verses that outline the opulence of the Absolute. You know, that which makes Krishna rich. You know, he is self-enriched, but we're talking about opulences. That means great qualities. So just for beginners, we have different versions or different ways of looking at the creation of the world. One is the three-layered Vishnus, starting with Karna Dakshay Vishnu, also sometimes referred to as Mahavishnu. And then he's lying in the great Karna ocean. Karna Daka refers to ocean. And then we also have the next layer of Vishnu, that's Garbhadakshay Vishnu, who is, you know, pregnant with all of us, and who from his abdomen comes the lotus flower from his lotus navel, and there Brahma appears, and Brahma is known as a secondary creator. He basically assists, but he's oftentimes given the credit of being the creator. But we have to look at greater details to understand his position. And then from that expansion, from the Garbhadakshay Vishnu is born Kshirodakshay Vishnu, which is a manifestation of the Lord, kind of like from huge to mediocre size to small. Kshirodakshay Vishnu is small enough to be seated in our heart in a localized way, and he is definitely the observer of things. Like he's there to supervise, you can say, and he is super soul who supervises. Isn't that interesting? He's the Paramatma in the heart, Param, great soul. That's the meaning of Paramatma. And he supervises, he watches over us in a super way. And so that's one explanation given of the creation. We also appreciate that there is when it comes to the creation, there is Shiva and his lingam, which is his male organ, is united with the female organ of Parvati, right? And in this way, people revere the Murti because it's the universal mother and father. That's another presentation that's made. It's almost like, you take your pick. How these two mesh together, it would be maybe a little complicated to explain, but we have at least these two scenarios. And then Brahma, he has been the first created being in this world. He would be like what the Christians call Adam, right? First man to be born. And the first progenitor, the first father of everything in this world. And it's he who's given empowerment by the Lord to create. He's given the tools, the instruments, whereby everything is manifest as we now know it. See, it's a little more complicated than simple. And so that's when it says Krishna's, give me 1 second, okay? See, Joe, yeah, talked to him. Yeah, I talked to Joe earlier. Yeah, I did. I'm just doing a class right now. I can explain later. Okay, that's our little break for today. So Krishna is ever present during all of these scenarios. Krishna is the ultimate father. That's another way, that makes it another aspect that makes, or detail that makes it even a little more fun, or maybe even complex or complicated. Krishna is the original father. He says, Ahang bija pita. So it's not Vishnu, it's not Brahma, it's not even Shiva, it's Krishna now. So look at the different ways of looking at the creation. But looking at this first phrase in the verse, he is there in the beginning, he's there at the end, and he's there in the middle. He's all ever present. In some shape or form, as Vishnu, as Brahma, etc., etc. Okay, so then, any questions about creation?
Question, Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, what are your thoughts about in India, Vishnu becomes superior to Krishna? What are your thoughts about that? How did that happen? What?
That happens by people who don't read the Bhagavatam.
Or,
if you read the Bhagavatam, then everything fits in place nicely, right?
before reading Bhagavatam, most of our knowledge came from Hollywood. I mean, the Bollywood movies.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's how they.
Oh, that's how they present it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow they presented Krishna as part of the Dashavataram. But
Yeah.
after coming to ISKCON, we realized that he is not actually part of that. So that,
Yeah, he's not even in that list, according to Jayadev Goswami,
yes.
when we talk about the Das Avatar. So the point is that here you can make application to the philosophy of Achincha Beta Beta Tattva. God is one and God is different, or God is one, God is distinct. So when we talk about Vishnu, there is no dispute about, we're talking about Krishna. They seem to be two different persons, but if we look at the real deeper analysis by the works of the Goswamis, we'll appreciate that Krishna has some opulences that exceed even Vishnu or Narayan, that you can find in the Nectar of Devotion or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So that's why it's good to study these things, so we can understand Bhakti in greater depth. So I don't think we need to argue. I mean, sometimes people say it's Vishnu who's first, and then others say it's Krishna that's first, and so it is like the hen. Is the chicken first or the egg first? Which one comes first? Does it really matter very much? Both Krishna and Vishnu share the status of being God. And we don't have any qualms about identifying ourselves as followers of Vishnu. We are called Vaishnava. That means we follow Vishnu. But to go deeper into the subject, that's why the Bhagavatam is important, to appreciate the more charming side of God. There we explore the personality Krishna. Right? And we hear all about Krishna, when he's baby, right up to the time that before he leaves this world. It's a Leela avatar, Krishna. There's a charm there, something that endears you, binds you to him. And most important to understand, Ahang bija paradapita, I'm the seed giving father of all. That is expressed in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Bhagavatam, it is said that Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, all incarnations come from Krishna. Okay, so that might be complicated for some people. But one way to look at it is that if everything's very simple, it may not captivate you enough. The Lord is complex, and He is like a maze. He's like a banyan tree. He's many branched. He's everywhere, all over the place. And
my I grew up as a Vaishnavite, but we always thought Vaishnu and Krishna are one and the same, because my father would always recite Vishnu Sahasranamam.
Can you identify yourself? Who's talking right now? I'm sorry.
Vishnu Sahasranamam.
Vasanta is talking, Maharaj.
Oh, Vasanta is talking. Okay, please let us know who you're.
Oh, sorry. So he would, Vishnu Sahasranamam is recited by, suppose it's Krishna recite, Krishna talking to Bhishma.
Yeah, Bhishma is writing on the
exactly
bed of arrows to
Krishna,
answering Yudhishthira Maharaj's questions, basically. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Yeah. So there is. Yeah, we're not saying the same thing. We're simply saying that they're one and the same.
Yeah.
So there's no. They show different characterizations, different features of the same one. It doesn't mean that God is schizophrenic, that he's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It just shows different features of the one aspect. Yeah. It would be like looking at a tree. You look at one side of the tree and it's got at a certain angle, and you see the beautiful aspects of it, and you go another 90 degrees around, you see another feature. The tree is one, but you see different features at that one tree. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit in that understanding.
Maharaj.
Yes.
This is Gaura Chandra Das.
Oh, Jai, Haribol, how are you?
Thank you. Really blissful in your presence.
Okay.
Just a tiny little thing regarding Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, and this is mentioned in his biography, he said, devotees of Vishnu are called Vaishnavas. Devotees of Krishna are called Karshna. Devotees of Radha are called Gaudiya.
Yes, so that's fine. Some of those terms you're not going to hear. It won't be so common, but yes, thank you for helping us with some of the technical things here. Yeah. Okay, so I think that we can move along, and we understand a little bit about how there's this multiple layers of God coming to help create the world and show it for what it is. It's like a little bit like a layered cake. When you bake a cake, there's certain ingredients in there. Depending on how creative you can be, the cake is just going to be something that's totally bedazzling. So there's no story to do with this topic of creation like what we have here. It's wondrous. It's actually the descriptions are extraordinary, not ordinary. And so we have to appreciate, if God is going to do something, he's going to do it in a wondrous way, in a sensational way, right? It's going to be extremely captivating. And so that's what we have here, is these explanations. All right. Anything else from anyone?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Prabhupada, Dharma.
Yes.
So Maharaj, in the Brahma Samhita, it says sun is a god, Ganpati is a god, and Lord Shiva is god. So they have 5 gods. So I get confused.
Well, we shouldn't get confused, because the conclusion of the Brahma Samhita is that there's the God. There may be many gods, but there's the God, okay? And that is Krishna. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, right? Adikarta heard that phrase, many times, during the initiation. And so did Sandamani. So it is, you know, a matter of looking at the whole thing, and not just looking at one verse, you know, because that will throw you off. You have to, you know, go through this whole 5th chapter and finally come to conclusion. The thing that gets repeated again and again is the name Govindam, you know, Govindam, which refers to Krishna. And yes, there are many gods, but there is the God ultimately. And the God also has different facets, such as Vishnu, the various, and some of the avatars, which I think we discussed last week. There's different kinds of avatars, right? Many. There's Leela avatars. What we're talking about here is the Purusha avatars, the 3 Vishnu expansions, Purusha avatars. We have Manvandara avatars. These are Manu, the different Manus that appear in different times within history. There's Guna avatars, and those avatars refer to the 3 personalities to do with their presence in this world. Brahma being the secondary creators we discussed, Shiva being the destroyer, and Vishnu being the maintainer. Yeah, and so we have Leela avatars, like some persons like, say, Ramachandra, and some of the other, you know, like as we were talking, the Das avatars, some of the famous ones that hook you, you know, to your heart with their heroic deeds. And there's also the Yuga avatars, which is, you know, there's 4 yugas, and there's a prominent deity for each yuga. And we all know who the Yuga Avatar is for this age, and that is none other than
Lord Chaitanya.
Chaitanya. Yeah, that's right. I think we've covered all the different Shakyavesh avatar that can refer to a jiva soul who's empowered by Krishna. Shakyavesh, somebody who's given Shakti. But where we lie, we don't fit into any of these categories, so don't even give it a thought. Don't even, not a chance. Are we going to be there? Are we going to go there? Okay.
I have a
Maharaj,
Maharaj.
Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Oh, I'm sorry, Vaishnavi Mataji, go ahead.
When we are talking about avatars, you just said Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is avatar, the recent most avatar. But then there is also Kali Kale Nama Rupe Krishna avatar. In the age of Kali, Nama Rupe Krishna avatar. In the Krishna avatar comes in the name of his holy names.
Right, which was delivered by
Gauranga Mahaprabhu.
Gauranga Mahaprabhu, yes. We don't want to make a distinction between the 2. Yeah, Gauranga Chaitanya, he delivers to the world himself in the form of the name. That's right. It's good that we're thinking about the different avatars. When we're talking about some of these things, it's good that some of you take notes down, okay? Because it's good to just, you know, keep this in your head. And so when you're reading, you understand the complexities of our Vedic Bhagavad philosophy. Okay, so shall we move on then?
I think Soumya has a question.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please accept my humble obeisances. Yes, Maharaj, this is Sandamani Devi Dasi, your servant. Maharaj, I have a question. When we talk about Shaktivesh avatar, it is Srila Prabhupada for us, right, Maharaj?
Yes, that is one type of Shaktivesh avatar. That's right.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj. And another question.
We can also say, since we're on the topic, we also identify Jesus Christ as a Shakyamesha avatar, somebody who is extremely empowered, to do good work, to elevate the consciousness of people. He's also referred to as Shakyamesha avatar.
Okay, Maharaj. So all gurus who have come in the time, at that time, for that purpose, would they all be considered Shakyavesha avatars?
No, I'd say only very prominent ones are. Those have done incredible work in sharing this culture. They can be labeled as Shakyavesha avatar. The ones that we should familiarize ourselves with are the ones that are listed in such places as the Bhagavatam.
Okay,
that's where you can become more well versed in who's a Shakyavesha and who is not. Some of them have God status, some of them are Vishnu Tattva, some of them are Jiva Tattva. Okay, and for certain persons to understand this a little more clearly, Tattva means, let's say, reality, okay? Or it can be defined as philosophy or truth. So truth or reality is that those of us who are on this call, we are all Jiva Tattvas, unless if I'm missing something. We are all Jiva Tattva, and then there's also Vishnu Tattva, which is God category. And we are, those of us who are Jiva Tattva, that means we are of the living entity category. We're not God, we're part and parcel. And there's also the terms Swangsha and Vibhinangsha. So Swangsha referring to the Lord's God status, God presence, and Vibhinangsha referring to, like, it's another word basically for Jiva Tattva, living entities, ordinary living entities, but who may be, they're just living entities, little gods, small gods.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Hare Krishna.
So let's look at a little bit what is said about the Vedas. It is said here in the purport, there are various kinds of books of knowledge, such as the 4 Vedas. Srila Vyasadeva was responsible for making available to the world the 4 Vedas. There was one Veda, and then it was divided for some practical purposes to suit different kinds of people. And so when we talk about the Rig Veda, we're talking about many hymns, and it's my understanding a lot of it has to do with either beautiful songs, beautiful poems in honor of, in many cases, Indra. Then you have Sama Veda, which outlines many rituals. And I guess Brahminical people would take a lot of interest in that. Then the next one is Yajur Veda. Yajur Veda refers to instructions how to execute these rituals, these different how to lay it out, how to execute, how to perform them. Then you have Atharva Veda, which is the science which offers how to deal with the difficult circumstances, like spells against, casting spells on enemies, or also how to dealing with diseases, severe diseases, and this Atharva Veda. So just for simple purposes, I'm giving it to you. So that's 4 Veda. And then it's mentioned here, there's supplementary, does it say, is that the word? There's some, 6 supplements. It almost like sounds like the medication you take. So 6 supplements, and they're called Angas, Vedangas. That means branches of the Vedas. And I'm going to just recite them to you. But before I do that, I'm just readying your minds to understand that it gets complicated. And because there are people with complicated minds, especially for medical people, and they're able to retain and hold, let's say, a lot of these complexities, because we're dealing with the science of the world and God. So it is complicated, because each and every one of us has our own universe called the body, and it's complicated. It's comprised of an incredible mechanism. So when it comes to the Vedangas, anga meaning branch of knowledge, you have what's called Shiksha, and that deals with phonetics, and with chanting mantras. And then there's Chandas, that's a second one, and that refers to a meter, a certain meter that you utilize in chanting mantras. And then another branch is Vyakaran, which Prabhupada does bring up in purports, in especially the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was well versed in this Vyakarana when he was young as Nimai Pandit. This deals with grammar, Vedic grammar, or Sanskrit grammar. And then we have Nirukta, that's another branch, etymology. And then we have Jyotisha, that deals with astronomy. And then finally, the sixth one deals with some certain levels of rituals. And so that deals with that. So you've got 4 sections, then you've got 6. And now what's mentioned is the Vedanta Sutra. And Vedanta Sutra is the summary of all the ancient Vedas. Everything's kind of like put in a synopsis, and it's put into sutra code. Does anybody know what a sutra is? Like, sutra is like a bullet point.
A theorem?
Pardon me?
It's in mathematics they would call theorems, so it would be something like that in sutras means.
Yeah, simple one-liners. Usually that's what we mean by codes. So the summary of the Vedas is presented in simple format and codes. And just want to make a note that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a teacher of Vyakarana. He was really big on grammar. And one thing that he had his students do, because everybody knows he was called Nimai Pandit. He was a great scholar. Even though he was young, he was just like people saw him like a child prodigy. He was just brilliant. And when he would teach a lesson, he would get everyone to take any word and bring it back around to the meaning of Krishna. He would relate it to Krishna. Every word he relates to Krishna. Hence, he established Krishna consciousness. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of what we call the Vedas. And we appreciate Vyasadev's efforts.
Where's your helmet?
I'm sorry?
Your helmet.
Vyasadeva played a major role in delivering the Vedas and making them available for people. And then we have the 5th Veda. We have 4 Veda and a 5th, which is all the stories and the Puranas and the histories and the epics, like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and so on like that. So there's lots there. When you talk about the Vedas, it's just a wealth of knowledge, of information, of different subject matters. And so the Bhagavatam that we study is part of that Purana, called the Amalam Puranam, the Purana that's spotless, that doesn't deal with, let's say, worshiping gods for material benefits. That's it rests with pure bhakti. That's what the Bhagavatam is all about. There is no place for any material motivated kind of a spiritual approach or a religious approach. Is that a little bit more clear, Prabhus, for you all? I hope so.
Yes, Maharaj.
You know, so somebody might ask, why don't we study these? Oh, you can. You have to have you should have a bhakti yoga teacher, a bhakta, who will teach you these different subject matters that we call the Vedas. Otherwise, you can get very distracted, and every guru's got his own twist or style. So it's good to hear everything from a bhakti yogi if you want to go deeper. Now, when Prabhupada was with us, some devotees did want to get involved in these areas of different subject matters, like astrology was one. And Prabhupada, more or less, he kind of discouraged it. He wasn't, of course, he knows his own students, his own disciples. And he felt people get very distracted, and they oftentimes, it often is that happens that when you go into a certain branch of study, you kind of leave your bhakti behind as well. There's a danger of also becoming very.
Maharaj, you're muted.
Someone's trying to get in there.
You
So
got muted for a minute. We didn't hear you for the
yeah,
last.
I was muted for a second, and Prabhupada was discouraging some devotees. It would be depending on who it was, but some people would easily be distracted. And the danger of astrology is that you get so wrapped up in it that your whole life starts to depend on it. Oh, what does my chart say for today? And then you become so dependent on what might be there that you almost forget, well, to depend on Krishna. And the whole idea is to depend on Krishna. Astrology was something Prabhupada said about astrology. He says Vedic astrology does have its place, and it can help couples who are thinking about settling down together to establish their compatibility. So in this way, he's not dismissing Vedic wisdom, Vedic Gyan, but he didn't want us to leave the path of simple service to the Almighty, to Krishna. That seemed to be his motive. And we're talking about danger. Once you become a little bit well-versed in these other Vedas, you can sort of strut around with your nose in the air and become a little bit snooty, says, I know this and I know that. But what keeps a pundit in check is the fact that they perform acts of humility. And you always have to stay in good association with each other. It's really vital. That's so important. What is the use of all this knowledge if you can't be a humble person? Isn't it, Prabhus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. What you said is right. There is a danger of losing your humility when you learn more. Definitely.
Yeah, you can, very well put. It can really go to your head, I know so much. And even sometimes we've had people in the Sanskrit department and they start to challenge everything, like the acharyas. Why did they use this word? Why did they use that word? And they just think that they're their own, they're just on some high and mighty, high horse, as we say, right? And then you can see that their bhakti starts to wither away. They were so eager to have a status of being a pundit, so much that they lost their bhakti. And as Jesus said, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world, but he loses his soul? So you can have all the wisdom under your belt, And if you forget to be a nice, humble servant, then, you know, what's the value of your knowledge? It's actually going to basically steal your heart away. Good. So, you know, I've bumped into some of these types, you know, devotee God brothers who feel they know so much and they can quote from this place and that place, and they can put on a good debate. But what is worth is your debate if you forget to serve Krishna? Just like we have that story in the 10th canto. What good is it these Brahmins were performing their yagyas, and when they had the opportunity to actually take care of Krishna Balaram, they're saying, we're very hungry. Can you help us with something? And the Yagya Brahmins, they were saying, oh, go away, boys. Can't you see we're busy doing our Brahminical work? And yet here is God saying, can you offer me a leaf, flower, fruit, or water? And they kind of like, they missed the boat. They missed the whole point about being a scholar. And so after that didn't work, then, you know, some coward boys went to ask on behalf of Krishna Balaram, actually. And then they came back saying, oh, Krishna, we couldn't get anything. They told us they're too busy. They don't have any time for us. Okay. And then, so then Krishna Balaram said, they said, why don't you just go to the wives of the Brahmins, see how they respond. So the wives of the Brahmins didn't go through a big, you know, training course. But when they heard that Krishna Balaram they wanted something, they were hungry, they stopped everything they were doing. They stopped their household duties and they just went right to it. So they understood the purpose of the Vedas, which is to serve and to know Krishna. Vedaischa sarvayar aham eva vidya, Vedanta krid veda eva chaham. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, to get close to him. And it's not to become a scholar. It's to become a devotee of the Lord, to take a humble position. That's the idea.
Maharaj, can I add something to it, please?
Why not?
I heard in one lecture somebody was saying, our Shastras are not for arguments, but our Shastras for transformation of our heart and for realization.
Very good. Yeah, exactly. And yet you do find that people, it's common for Brahmins to get into these debates. It was a very, let's say, it was part of the pop culture of the time during Chaitanya's time. He was a scholar and he got involved in debates. And he basically could just defeat everybody. But then he would also remark, and many of his contemporaries were also scholars. What's the point, you know? You know, shouldn't we be serving the Lord? Isn't that really what our life is all about? You know, Brahmins and rabbis, they do that. You know, you get, you know, people in the cardinals, anybody who's scholarly but religious at the same time. They're able to offer a lot of wisdom, but they also miss a point. And that is the kind of like human factor. And they are oftentimes have an inability to demonstrate sincerity. You can have all these material assets, such as being a scholar, being wise, having a gorgeous body. These are material assets. Or, you know, let's say being very wealthy and so on like that. But if you don't have sincerity, then again, you are missing the boat. All right. Yes. Uh-huh.
I was just thinking of, because you mentioned the connection between humility and knowledge. And Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 13:8, where he describes knowledge, the first word he uses, amanitvam, that is humility. So more you know, more you become humble. And that reminds me of your great God brother, Bhanu Swami, who is such a scholar, but he's so humble that it's just outstanding. And you know him better than me.
Yeah, that's right. He's one of our Canadian boys. Japanese background, yeah. True, Prabhupada would like to, he liked to quote that shloka, that word, you know, amanitvam, adambuvam, prideless. They're very similar to each other. Bruce, you can just skip over and look at this very quickly, or 13.8, and which is actually, there's a host of verses all tied together like a bundle of grapes, you know, on one stem. And you can look at these particular qualities. They're beautiful. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence. So on that topic, I just wrote a poem this morning. Would you like? And it's about violence versus non-violence.
Just always, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj.
Always.
Okay. Okay, so because we are conducting kirtans all over on Saturday, like major cities across the globe, that's to protest the very senseless aggressions that have come upon Hindus, and of course our devotees have been attacked. 2 of our devotees lost their lives. Prabhupada's Murti was all burned up, and they put some fire to the Rath cart, and that's one place outside of Dhaka, and it's horrible what's going on there right now. You know, hundreds of Hindu families, homes have been looted, and many hundreds. I heard 300 temples were under attack just recently. So we're appalled by all of this, all this violence. So I think you're all, let's say, up on this, what's been happening. It's in the news all over the place.
Yes, Maharaj.
And it's very, very tragic. Haribol Annapurna, thank you for being with us. She's one of our new, I guess you could say, recruits of this class. All right, so here we go. It's called Violence is Not Golden. Violence is not golden, but action with intelligence stolen. The insecurities that a person may feel arise from that which is not real. A mistaken notion that the body is me, when I am its engine of soul identity. If someone has a belief of a different view, does it mean then that they are askew? No, me and my group are not the center of all. That is the beginning of a major downfall, a failure in human thought and behavior, morphing into an obnoxious disfavor. The greatest flaw is misinterpretation, a gross misread fueling discrimination. So before we pass any needless judgment, reason should call for some adjustment. Ignorance is the vacuum of wisdom, a pull to an ugly, fearsome asylum. It must be smashed by common sense, dismantling a poor, ineffective fence. We all stand to profit from peaceful aggression and avoid a flood of blood obsession. Hare Krishna. Violence is not golden. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj.
Maharaj,
Yes.
will this be posted on the Instagram?
Yes. I did read it on the Instagram for this morning, and we'll put it on the blog. It'll be out in 2 or 3 days. Yeah. Thank you for listening. We discussed today chapter 10, the opulence of the absolute, and we've gone over the purport of 32. Hare Krishna. Anybody had a question? Yes.
What's the reason for saying for 38?
What's that?
Maharaj,
Go ahead.
I thought were we going to discuss about 13 chapter 8 sloka?
Yes, we did. We just went through the first two words.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of qualities of the Vaishnava.
Yeah.
The first one is humility. The second one is pridelessness. So we just wanted to bring it to your attention. Prabhupada quoted the first two verses quite a lot. That's what makes up a Vaishnava. You know, the quality of a Vaishnava is somebody who demonstrates humility and pridelessness. So that's why we brought you there. So if you want to take a little extra time and read the rest of it, I don't have any objections.
The purports are huge.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there, and we'll spend a few sessions on it. Yeah. Well, when the purports are long, that means Prabhupada is trying to point out that there's relevance here. It's of paramount importance. And we should take some good time to study that. Anything else, Prabhus, that may have come up?
Yes.
I have a question on the Upanishads. We have 108 Upanishads.
Right.
And is it also called Vedanta Sutra?
Is that under the list of Vedanta Sutra you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Somebody should look it up. It could be, because in the Upanishads there's code like there's verses, very simple verses in each one. Yeah, but our emphasis, Prabhupada wanted us to study Sri Ishopanishad, because there it becomes very clear that God is a person in the end. So study Sri Ishopanishad. You can go through all of them, but Prabhupada made emphasis on this Sri, the personality of Godhead.
I think Ralph has a question, Maharaj. He has his hands up.
Which person has it?
Ralph.
Oh, yes, Ralph. Yes, thank you, Ralph, for joining us today. Go ahead, Ralph. I see your hand. Okay, but we need to hear your voice.
Maybe it could be sometimes by mistake also. So
that could be.
I was wondering if I could speak to you a minute afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I guess so. How can we do that? I guess everyone else can get off, and then we can stay on. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I could ask you now. I just wanted to ask you about chanting.
Oh, yes. Okay.
When I'm chanting, can I chant Hari Ram? I find it shorter, chanting
instead of Rama.
Hari Ram instead of Hari Rama or Hari Rama.
Well, there's supposed to be a certain number of syllables, in the mantra, to make it to get the pronunciation the best we can. So I think the acharyas, they've actually given to us how we're to pronounce it. So it's better to include the Rama. Otherwise, you can go Hare Krishna. But, we're encouraged to say Hare Krishna, right? If you want to make some shortcuts on Rama, might as well do it with Krishna too. And maybe Hare too. We can just say Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare.
Okay, so it'll be Rama then. All right.
Rama
so I
is
won't
important.
chant. Okay, so I won't chant Hari Rama, chant Hari Rama.
That's right. Yeah. Hare
Okay,
Rama,
thank you,
Hare
sir.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefit to chanting with all of the syllables included. Not only is it pleasing to Krishna when he hears his names pronounced nicely, but we get so many benefits from saying these mantras properly. It even helps in your breathing technique. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There's so much benefit that comes just, the movement of the jaws and everything. That's on a more physical level, what to speak of the spiritual benefits that come from it. But good question.
Yeah, Maharaj, Maharaj, I just want to thank Ralph because that was a great question. And that was a question I've had for a long time, and I'm glad that he brought it up. But thank you very much.
Yeah. How many years has that been bothering you for?
It's been bothering me for like 10 years, Maharaj.
Okay. Well, again, we depend on the acharyas, and it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who made this Mahamantra so popular, and so there's a way to pronounce it. Yeah. We're not Sanskritists, most of us do. We don't pronounce things too well, but you could do the best you can. We have one devotee here, he's handicapped, and he can't say. You can't. When you hear him chant his japa, which he does faithfully, you wonder, really, is that the Maha Mantra? Really, is it? But we know he's sincere, and he can't form any sentences completely. So Krishna is looking at the effort behind it, right? But as far as possible, try to chant everything as it's given to us. So one time, the very, very famous Vishnu Jan Swami, one of Prabhupada's disciples, he was chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, 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 Hare Hare. So instead of saying Rama, he said Ramo. And Prabhupada corrected him on that. And he said, if you keep doing that, everything will be spoiled, he said. So Prabhupada was actually stressing that there is importance in the sound. So if you got it, if you're gifted to be able to pronounce things nicely, go for it. And of course, people will be excused if they have some linguistic problems or some handicaps.
Maharaj, I don't know if you've noticed, a lot of Kirtaniyas these days, they do the Ramo thing, and really, and do you talk to them, or how do you correct them? Or how
do I talk to them? I haven't heard many kirtans because thanks to COVID.
No, like when you hear a lot of the young Kirtaniyas, they always say Ramo,
Well, it's always good for anybody who's going to lead kirtan to take a course on how to chant properly, and what should be the mood behind it. So I think sometimes they miss these courses, which maybe aren't always available, so that they can understand the most important is the spirit. But if they have the ability to go for good pronunciation, then they should learn how to do it and why it's important to pronounce things properly. All right. So we want to thank everybody. We're going to see you all next week, right? Any of you who are involved in the protest kirtans for this Saturday, all the power to you.
Saturday, that's good. Protest for what?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhus.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Thank you,
Of course, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Vanja kalpatarubhyascha kripa sandubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. And we'd like to welcome and thank those persons who are with us for the first time.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Jai. Thank you, Annapurna. Jai.
Maharaj. Mahadev is here
Everyone.
as well.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Mahadev is there too. Great.
Yes.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed it, that you got something out of this.
Absolutely, Maharaj.
All right. Will you join us on Saturday for the kirtan?
What's
Would you, do you feel up to it?
Work
Yes,
on
Maharaj.
Saturday, Maharaj, but we're looking into it to see what we can do.
Okay, super. Let's stay in touch, all right?
We will.
All right.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your prasadam.
Hare Krishna.
We're going to have kirtan here at 7 o'clock. Anybody wants to join us, just have to fly in. Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Yes, Maharaj, I was right there.
You might be surprised. We may
Hare
have
Krishna.